Welcome to the New Year 2021 Disclosure Update. It's about to get fun, y'all. We've had 4 years of Donald Trump as the leader of the American people. And unfortunately, and I do say that with sincerity, I feel like virtually every single time he's talked about UFOs, he's downplayed the phenomenon. And I would have been the first one to give him credit if he would have talked about the issue in a serious way. And I'm sure a lot of people would have been upset with me had I done so. Just as I'm sure many are upset with me now that I'm saying I feel like he could have done a lot more with the UFO subject than he did. I guess you can't win, like ever. Let's quickly review every single video comment I'm aware of that Trump's made about UFOs. I'm not going to quote everything he said, but I'm going to give you the gist. On June 15th, 2019, Trump was speaking with George Stephanopoulos on Good Morning America. Stephanopoulos asked Trump if he's ever been briefed on the Navy encounters that have been swirling around the media and what he thinks about it. He said he has, and he also said he doesn't particularly believe in the UFO phenomenon. On July 5th, 2019, Trump appeared on the Tucker Carlson show and was asked if unidentified flying objects are real, to which he stated, "Personally, I tend to doubt it." On June 18th, 2020, Trump had a live stream with his son who asked him, "Do you intend to declassify the files on Roswell?" He said he may declassify the files, but the context in which he spoke made it appear he was actually citing Area 51 and not Roswell. On August 2020, Trump spoke with Lou Dobbs on Fox Business. Because I've never shown this clip before, I'm going to run it.
A lot of my friends are very concerned about what the federal government is doing when it comes to UFOs. So if I could just ask you, are you going to commit more resources to exploring UFOs and open the documents to the public?
Well, I think you're probably in this country, you're the UFO expert. So I'm going to be totally guided by the great Lou Dobbs, and I will tell you that I'll do whatever you ask me to do, including total transparency. And I got to tell you, there's probably some pretty good transparency needed there. There's no doubt about that.
This clip personifies where Trump has failed with UFOs. Not only was he willing in other instances to say he doesn't believe they exist, but here he basically just makes a mockery of the subject. If he would have only known what kind of legacy it would have left him to have spoken seriously and heartfelt about the subject before the American people, he never would have shut up about it. UFOs are one of the most important and serious subjects in our world. Some believe the most serious and most important. And when you really think about it, that is not an outlandish position. Here's an August 2020 quote by Chris Mellon. "The phenomenon is real. These are not Russian, US, or Chinese vehicles. If there is another intelligence from another system which is vastly more advanced and sophisticated than we are, and we are able to establish contact and communication, it would be the equivalent of possibly gaining hundreds of thousands or millions of years of knowledge in days or weeks." Had Trump stated anything like this during his presidency, it would have been amazing. And it would have gotten the world to collectively think about the potential implications of UFO reality. Unfortunately, he didn't do anything of the sort. But I would have loved that kind of leadership from him as it pertains to the UFO subject. In the following clip, a former head of the Central Intelligence Agency, John Brennan himself, was asked about the encounters that Navy pilots have been having with UAP. This is from December 16th, 2020 on the YouTube channel or show Conversations with Tyler. And so John Brennan goes into all of the importance of sifting through all of the possible data that can be acquired from these encounters. And then he goes into his hypothesis on what this all means.
So at the end of all that sifting and interpreting, What do you think is the most likely hypothesis?
I don't know. When people talk about it, is there other life besides what's in the States, in the world, the globe? Life is defined in many different ways. And I think it's a bit presumptuous, if not arrogant, for us to believe that there's no other form of life anywhere in the entire universe. What that might, be is, I think, subject to, a lot of different views. But I think some of the phenomena we might be seeing continues to be unexplained, and might in fact be some type of phenomenon that is the result of something that we don't yet understand, and that could involve some type of activity that some might say constitutes a different form of life.
Now, just like Chris Mellon, he has given tremendous credibility to the subject. He said that some of the phenomenon we will be seeing may be another form of life. And I think this is extremely noteworthy, because prior to December 16th, 2017, when the New York Times article was published, I don't think anyone in their right mind, in a serious tone, would ask a former director of the Central Intelligence Agency what he thinks about the UFO subject in this context. It was the December 16th, 2017 New York Times article that was the genesis of this acceleration within the disclosure process, and it was the publicization of the Navy encounters that has facilitated this. So anyone that says to you things have not changed, I think they're just out of their mind. Here's an interview from January 23rd, 2019, where George Knapp interviews the former Senate Majority Leader, Harry Reid, and this is on the YouTube channel Mystery Wire. And here, Harry Reid goes into the absurdity of the American government, the American apparatus, not taking the UFO subject adequately, seriously enough.
In my opinion, this is something that we should be studying. And as I said, it's a worldwide phenomenon, not just here in the United States. There are certain places we really don't understand why, that there's more occurrences and have been over a long, long time. There are different parts of the world even where there are a lot of these occurrences occur. But we haven't done enough about it. I mean, I think we should have congressional hearings on it. I think we should, I think the Defense Department should be looking into this. I think that the science and technology, we have an Office of Science. They should be looking into some of this stuff, asking Congress for money to do it.
Here's an interview from July 16th, 2020 with Jim DeFede from CBS Miami, where he interviews the chairman of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, Marco Rubio. And in this small segment, Marco Rubio echoes what the former Senate Majority Leader has stated regarding the importance of studying and discovering what is going on regarding UFOs.
There is someone flying in the airspace that no one else is allowed to fly in, and we don't know who it is, and it isn't something we have. We need to know what that is. I mean, that's in my mind, I mean, I don't understand why we wouldn't want to know what it is.
A quick analysis of the quotes from the former director of the Central Intelligence Agency, John Brennan, from the former Senate Majority Leader, Harry Reid, and for the current chairman of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, would be that they all firmly believe that UFOs should be taken far, far more seriously than they have been in the past and in recent memory. And so we need to change the situation. I believe that there is a finite number of scientists, engineers, and investigators within the United States government, whether they're in aerospace companies as subcontractors or not, regardless, there is a finite number of people that are tasked at the behest of the United States government to study UFOs on the basis that they exist, on the basis that they are almost certainly, if not certainly, not coming from human civilization, and on the basis that they are a potential national security threat, and on the basis that the technology, if it could be understood, would give the US military a huge edge, and that's putting it lightly. You could basically rule the world if you could duplicate what UFO technology displays all the time, not just before the American military, but wherever they go and whenever they're encountered by any military inventory in the world, they display capabilities that are simply not in concert with what is known to exist amongst human civilization. The following clip comes from an interview with David Marceau and Lou Elizondo. It was published on October 13th, 2020. Marceau asked Elizondo when he started to assess that some UFOs simply are not conventional aircraft. And of course, this interview, which is a very good one, along with all of the other clips that I've shown you, you can find a link to those in the description below.
When you were, I guess, is this something that you've always sort of followed and had some belief, or, you know,
Nope.
Was there a turning point at which a light bulb went on and you said, wow,
Never had the luxury to even
do this?
Yeah, no, never had the luxury to even think about UFOs. I was too busy catching and chasing bad guys. It wasn't until I had my final meeting, initial meeting with the then director of the former program, that I came to the understanding that they really mean that there are UFOs out there. When he says UAP, they mean UFOs, unidentified flying objects, and we're taking this topic very seriously. And at that point, it was kind of a slow, gradual realization that we're dealing with something here that really, truly is not some sort of conventional technology. We really don't know what the hell these are, but they really are there. And I think that was kind of the epiphany for me, which occurred in the 2008 timeframe.
What was that one piece of information that pushed you over the edge?
Ooh, it wasn't one. It was many. I mean, I got to be careful what I say here, but I can guarantee you that 99% of your audience right now, if they were to see a couple things that I was privy to, there'd be no question in my mind what this is. None.
Lou Elizondo flat out said that 99% of David Marceau's audience, if they were to see what Elizondo has been privy to, they would have no doubt what they were looking at. And this only supports my contention that there's a finite amount of people within the U.S. government, whether directly in the U.S. government or they're just employed by the U.S. government and they're working in an aerospace company. Regardless, there is a finite amount of people employed by the U.S. government, funded by the U.S. government, that either are extremely confident we're not alone or know we're not alone. And it's not based upon hunches, but it's based upon sensor data and witness testimony that has been collected for decades and decades. I think we're well beyond the debate stage. Now, there may have been a debate stage at some point in the past where generals and scientists and engineers and people privy to this information were debating, could this really be of non-human origin? And I'm sure that was a thing. I don't think they probably jumped to conclusions right away. But I think after enough sensor data has been collected from multiple systems showcasing the same thing over and over again, and it's corroborated by witness testimony, and it's corroborated by witness testimony even outside of the military, I think we are far, far beyond that debate stage that may have, and that almost certainly was a part of the equation within the U.S. government at one point. I mean, even Elizondo has said that he believes the U.S. government has material from these UAP. And some people believe they've recovered entire craft. I have no idea whether that's true or not, but I believe that there are people that already know. And so this is going to segue beautifully into the next section of this New Year 2021 UFO Disclosure Update. Before we go any further, I just wanted to let you know that I have a Patreon account, a YouTube membership account, and even a merch shop where you can buy a mask like this. All the links are below. That said, if all you did was just watch this video the whole way through, I would consider that profound support of my efforts. Let's continue. In part 2 of the 2021 New Year UFO Disclosure Update, we're going to take a look at the groundbreaking article from the Debrief, published on December 2nd, 2020, written by Tim McMillan, titled Fast Movers and Transmedium Vehicles, the Pentagon's Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force. One of the highlights of this article is an email from October 16th, 2019, that was acquired through the Freedom of Information Act. Tim McMillan beautifully explains the significance of this email during a spaced out radio episode with Dave Scott that aired on December 3rd, 2020. The emails that we got via FOIA, I was blown away when you're seeing the Vice Joint Chiefs of Staff of the Navy not only being briefed on UFOs, but then recommending the Vice Chief of the Air Force get a briefing and the Secretary of the Navy. This is the highest levels of the U.S. military. Obviously, the Joint Chief themselves would be the top of that, but it's like any other organization. The CEO isn't the guy that's boots on the ground operational. They're just the guy whose butt is on the line. So the highest levels that are able to do anything in operation are being briefed about it. That may have gone on in the past, but I'm not aware of any evidence like that since the closure of Blue Book, maybe. As to why intelligence and military officials are seemingly starting to get briefed for the very first time on UFOs within the past few years, and the same being true for members of Congress, I really don't know. My best stab at this question right now is that it's a combination of the efforts of UAP transparency activists, such as Lou Elizondo and Chris Mellon, as well as people on the inside of the US government that are pushing for a change in policy on how UFO information is handled. There's probably other forces leading to this sea change, but it's all speculative at this current time. Another huge component of this groundbreaking article is the revelation that 2 classified intelligence reports on UFOs have been widely distributed to the U.S. intelligence community to the point of them going absolutely viral. Numerous sources from various government agencies told the Debrief news outlet that these reports include clear photographic evidence of UAP. Those sources willing to discuss the report all expressed shock that it had been so widely distributed amongst the intelligence community. Nobody that I know of knows for sure why these 2 UFO reports have been so widely distributed amongst the intelligence community. Tim McMillan's opinion is that the UAP task force distributed these UFO intelligence reports so widely because they wanted to get that information out there. Not just so that the public would know about it, but more so that the intelligence community would start taking UFOs as a real issue that requires scrutiny, because there really is something going on with this enigma. To put this in perspective, these UFO reports were distributed to thousands of analysts amongst the U.S. intelligence community, but also including the intelligence community within the Five Eyes Alliance. So the UAP task force is technically a continuation of ATIP. This therefore begs the question, why didn't ATIP distribute UFO intelligence reports to the intelligence community many years ago? Why did they wait until the past few years? Well, I don't really know. But what we can say with certainty is that ATIP was totally unknown by almost everyone in the intelligence community, the military, and Congress for that matter. And now, not only does the whole world know at this time that ATIP existed, but they now know that the UAP task force exists right now and that the US government is currently investigating UAP. Ultimately, I think what you're seeing with your own eyes right now is the unraveling of UFO secrecy. There are more stages to go, so let's just enjoy the journey. This will happen in stages. Disclosure is a process, not an event. That said, I think it's fitting that I tell you all, the house of cards will fall, baby. According to those willing to discuss the document, the report's most disconcerting aspect was one of the potential explanations for what UAP could represent. Sources say a list of possible prosaic explanations for these mysterious airborne encounters was provided. However, the report expressly stated that the potential for UAP to be alien or non-human technology was of legitimate consideration. This sentiment from the article truly throws me for a loop, as does the following one. Every source the debrief spoke with who had either seen the published position reports or were familiar with the activities of the UAPTF said that no concise estimate of the situation for UAP has been achieved. While they acknowledge that many hypotheses are being explored, the U.S. government presently lacks any definite explanation for UAP-related events. Instead of explaining why these two sentiments make me scratch my head, I'll just drop the following seeming contradictions.
Whether or not we've been visited or are being visited and will continue to be visited, I would hate to speculate on that. I have my own, obviously my own thoughts on that based upon my observations.
Yeah.
But if it's
can you speak personally? Could you do that? Just tell us what
sure. If you
having
ask me,
been in your job.
Personally, I think, yeah, we're certainly not alone. I don't know how else to explain it. If it's not ours and it's not, some folks from overseas, then that kind of limits where these are from.
I got to be careful what I say here, but I can guarantee you that 99% of your audience right now, if they were to see a couple things that I was privy to, there'd be no question in my mind what this is. None. There'd be no question in my mind what this is. None.
Yeah, good to be with you, Tucker, and thanks for covering this, because not enough journalists, I think, do. The late 2019 incident essentially involved a US carrier strike group, as with the incident in 2004 and 15, doing its workups on pre-deployment, preparing to go abroad and do the missions that the Navy are assigned. And the pilots are flying off the coast, off the Atlantic seaboard, and see essentially a black triangle, white sort of indicator lights on its peripheral tips, coming out of the water very quickly, and then accelerating at extremely high speed at about a 90-degree angle. And one of the pilots took a photo, very good photo, I'm told, by multiple sources on his iPhone. And myself and Tim McMillan, who really led the charge in this investigation, have sort of tied it down. So I think the real point of note on this is that this phenomenon, whatever it is, continues to occur.
It came out of the water. So expound on that a little bit. There have been over the years a number of reports of unidentified underwater vehicles moving in ways that don't make any sense at all. Tell us what you know about that.
Yeah, this is one of the reasons the Navy is very sensitive about this topic, is because it essentially doesn't want either China or Russia in particular to figure out whatever these vehicles are, because they appear to be intelligently controlled, figure out how they do what they do, because they move at hundreds of knots under the water, or at least they can, and they maneuver in ways that would essentially render a submarine or an aircraft carrier or any, quite frankly, military warship extremely vulnerable to attack. And the capabilities, because of what we understand in terms of friction under the water, right, that these things manifest, and then what they do in the air as well, this is some special stuff, whatever it is.
I hope those clips gave you a clear picture as to why the prior two quotes from the debrief article threw me for a loop. In fairness, the first quote at least said that the UFO report expressed that one of the potential explanations for what UAP could represent is alien or non-human technology. But even then, I don't see how that could even be low on the list if it is. To me, quite frankly, the most likely explanation for some UFOs is non-human intelligence, whatever that may mean. I'm personally over 50% probability on that, and I believe those adequately briefed on UFOs within the US government share my sentiment. And I think that will come out eventually, so stay tuned for that. The second quote I found far more questionable than the first. Within it, it stated that those familiar with the activities of the UAPTF said that no concise estimate of the situation for UAP has been achieved. Now, granted, that quote seemed to suggest that nobody within the UAPTF actually shared that sentiment directly, but instead it was an assessment acquired by some that are familiar with the activities of the UAPTF. Considering that, I would love if the former director of ATIP and UAPTF, and I'm not referring to Elizondo, someone else took his place when he left, I wish that person, the former director, went on the record for what his best hypothesis is on where UAP do not originate from. I believe he would say he believes they do not stem from human civilization. I believe he would say that partly because Luis Elizondo has gone on the record stating that him and his colleagues, when he worked at ATIP, all felt strongly that some UAP do not originate from human civilization. I think we're in a weird in-between stage right now where the US government simply does not want to cross that bridge yet, telling us what their true assessment is of UAP reality, at least in terms of what it isn't. I asked disclosure scholar and filmmaker Kikola Jallo what he thought about this situation. This is what he had to say. Yeah, it's all messaging and timing. No one wants to outright say the truth because you can't undo it. Just like Tucker Carlson said, no one believes it's Russia or China. The politicians have to time it, and different levels of politicians know different things too. Regular senators are just trying to figure it out, but people that know. Also, many that know can hide behind the "we don't know" phrase. In their case, it's often a red herring or straw man. Of course, you don't know every single thing about quote-unquote them. It's disingenuous for them to act like they don't have any functional hypothesis. Now, that last clip that I showed you from the Tucker Carlson show, where he was interviewing columnists for the Washington Examiner, Tom Rogan, they were discussing an alleged incident where an F-18 pilot took a photograph of a triangular aerospace vehicle with his iPhone. And this was covered in one of the intelligence reports that was circulating amongst the U.S. intelligence community and the Five Eyes intelligence community that was given by the UAP task force. The following is from the debrief article covering this, and it will give you more information on what exactly was being discussed. Overwhelmingly, everyone the debrief spoke with said the most striking feature of the recently released UAPTF Intelligence Position Report was the inclusion of a new and extremely clear photograph of an unidentifiable triangular aircraft. The photograph, which is said to have also been taken from inside the cockpit of a military fighter jet, depicted an apparent aerospace vehicle described as a large equilateral triangle with rounded or blunted edges and large, perfectly spherical white lights in each corner. Officials who had seen it said the image was captured in 2019 by an F-18 fighter pilot. Two officials that received the report said the photo was taken after the triangular craft emerged from the ocean and began to ascend straight upwards at a 90-degree angle. It was indicated that the event occurred off the eastern coast of the United States. Several other sources confirmed the photo's existence. However, they declined to provide any further specifics of the incident. Regarding the overall theme of the recent report, officials who read it say the report primarily focused on unidentified submersible phenomena or unidentified transmedium vehicles capable of operating both underwater and in the air. The three officials we spoke with said the report suggested the UAP task force appears to be concerned that the objects being termed as UAP may be originating from within the world's oceans. Strange as this may sound, the idea of USO or unidentified submersible objects is not something exclusive to the current UAPTF. Here's a recreation of the photo in discussion from 2019, reportedly taken by an F-18 pilot of a triangular aerospace vehicle that came out of the ocean and went up at a 90-degree angle. This recreation was done by Dave Beatty, who created the documentary The Nimitz Encounters, that as of today has well over 5 million views, and you could watch it on YouTube. And I highly recommend that you do if you haven't already. Interestingly, Elizondo has stated that this image in question, that obviously has not been released, could be a still from a video. Based on the sheer number of sources that Tim McMillan and Tom Rogan were able to acquire that stated this reportedly amazing image exists, I'm confident it does. Even Elizondo says it does. Rogan and McMillan's sources from the military and intelligence community have conveyed they are confident that neither Russia nor China has produced anything like this reported triangle from 2019, nor anything from the most compelling UFO encounters. From all the research I've done that has been documented by people like McMillan and Rogan, as well as Elizondo and Chris Mellon, nobody from within the United States government believes these machines come from U.S. black projects either. So, if this very special stuff, as Rogan has put it, doesn't come from China, and it doesn't come from Russia, and it doesn't come from the United States, that puts us in a position where we need to start focusing on other sources, whatever that may mean, or to put it bluntly, we may not be alone in the universe. On January 19th, 2021, an amazing article published that was written by Tim McMillan and Tom Rogan, titled "The Decades-Long UFO Taboo the Biden Administration Will Have to Face." And this also comes from the Debrief website. Here's a very poignant quote from that piece. Also in October, Elizondo said, "I saw compelling data that demonstrably proves the reality of UAPs. I believe some in Congress have already seen this evidence for themselves, probably why they are taking it seriously." Our sources back up Elizondo's statement. Speaking on background, multiple government officials with requisite access say the U.S. government has a wealth of unreleased visual evidence. This includes photographs and videos captured on multi-million-dollar defense systems, as well as with personal GoPros and phone cameras of military pilots. Some images are said to have been taken as close as 50 feet from these enigmatic flying devices. Our sources also tell us that the best data collected has come from measurement and signature intelligence. Some of the most sophisticated and highly classified surveillance systems in the world have been able to gather diverse forms of data on UAP, including electromagnetic pulse, acoustic signature, electro-optical, unintentional radiation, spectroscopic, and dimension feature profiling intelligence. So, U.S. government, you're trying to tell me that after sifting through decades and decades and decades of sensor data of all different kinds, shapes and sizes, some from the space, some from the ground, some from the air, such as the E-2 Hawkeye and so forth, that you don't have, at this point, a working hypothesis on what UAP are not. And bear in mind that your sensor data is getting better all the time, because the potential to get accurate readings is getting better all the time. It's like computers. They constantly get better. Technology constantly gets better. So if anything, your certainty of what we're dealing with should increase over time, not decrease. Now, I'm not saying you know what it is. I'm saying I believe you are highly confident, if not knowledgeable, of what it's not. And I think I'm not alone with that. I think it's quite obvious to most people that that is the case. And the fact that these testimonies from people of all walks of life keep reporting the same thing over and over again. Flying saucers, cigar-shaped, triangular-shaped, the 6 observables constantly being reported, patterns emerging persistently over decades. I think it's pretty obvious. And I don't know how much longer you're going to play this game. Now, in fairness, I recognize this is a very complicated situation. And here is my analysis in a nutshell. December 22nd, 2020 tweet. Our lust for releasing UFO data doesn't consider any potential repercussions to national security that the intelligence community must grapple with. Even so, there's an incalculable human and innovation cost when we're ignorant about something so key to our reality. Giorgio Pacenza of the New Frontier Network podcast YouTube channel asked Lou Elizondo a fascinating question in an interview that published on December 23rd, 2020. He asked him if TTSA, although Elizondo was not part of TTSA at the time, but he asked him if TTSA would be willing to do a scientific recording of an interactive sighting, whether in the United States, perhaps Europe, or Latin America. This is what Elizondo had to say in answering that question.
So, Giorgio, wonderful question. I can't speak on behalf of TTSA, but I can tell you personally, absolutely. One of the things that we could certainly look at going down the road here is having a scientific, with proper cameras and everything else, an attempt to interact with these things. I think that's the holy grail of all this, right? If we have an ability to communicate, truly communicate in a way, and that communication doesn't have to be even a conversation, right? There's all sorts of ways to communicate. I can go like this, and people know what that means. Any basic form of communication, I think, would be incredibly helpful to this cause. But I don't think it's going to be necessarily the DoD, the Department of Defense, or frankly TTSA that will lead that charge. I think a fair, objective, scientific, academic approach to this would be more than welcome.
In that same vein, here's a fascinating tweet by Lou Elizondo. War Servant writes, "You mentioned UAP patterns useful for investigating. With equipment ready and in place, are naval ships being used as bait? Let's call it coincident deployment." Elizondo responds, "Fantastic question. And unfortunately, one I am not at liberty to elaborate on at this time, but keep asking this question. It's a very important one." Per Elizondo's statement in the previous clip that I shared with you, I agree with him that contact is absolutely the holy grail in all of this. I'm not referring to covert contact, because that's just not the same. And I don't want to get into that now because I've gone into that in depth in the past. But verifiable open contact is without question the holy grail of this whole thing, because if it is actually true we're being engaged by non-human intelligence, then the most direct way and the most verifiable way and the most reliable way to learn about the psychology and intention of this phenomenon is open contact. And whether it's the military doing experiments such as baiting the phenomenon with their nuclear-powered aircraft carriers, because we all know that the evidence indicates that this phenomenon is attracted to nuclear energy, or it's being done by private enterprise, private citizens, open contact is indeed the holy grail. And I think it's imperative that we move in that direction, because I don't believe this phenomenon is going anywhere. Whether the government lies to us about its existence, or whether the government tells us the truth, whether the government or private enterprise attempts to make contact with it or not, it's here. It's part of our biosphere, whether it's native to this earth or whether it's visiting this earth and has permanent residency, as it were. It's here. And it doesn't appear to be going anywhere, and I don't believe it ever will go anywhere. And we could just put our head in the sand and just go about our day and our nights and our years and our decades as a civilization and be like, it's here, whatever, or we can try to make open contact. Remember what Chris Mellon said. The phenomenon is real. These are not Russian, US, or Chinese vehicles. If there is another intelligence from another system which is vastly more advanced and sophisticated than we are, and we are able to establish contact and communication, it would be the equivalent of possibly gaining hundreds of thousands or millions of years of knowledge in days or weeks. To end this video, I just want to quickly speak about the next 4 years that we have, or that the United States has, with Joe Biden. If Joe Biden is watching this, which of course he is, I would say, and I'm talking to you, Mr. Biden, President Biden, you saw that mystery wire clip that I shared earlier, right? Well, that clip personifies a responsible approach to the subject. So I hope you will look at former Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid for inspiration in how to deal with this subject. I mean that speaking directly to President Biden and speaking in general terms. I will see you in the next episode.